Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Survivor 46 is here, and so is On Fire, the only official Survivor podcast, and we have a twist this season. The winner of Survivor 45, Dee Valladares, will be joining us every week.
We're going behind the scenes of the biggest moments, the how and the why things happen, and the strategy and analysis you can only get from someone like me, a Survivor winner.
Listen to On Fire, the official Survivor podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Hyperice, the leader in advanced warm-up and recovery technology. They have tons of innovative products, like Venom-heated wearables to help soothe sore back muscles, Normatec compression boots to speed up recovery and increase circulation, and Hypervolt massage guns to improve mobility. Loved by athletes like Naomi Osaka and Erling Haaland. Try them yourself. Get 10% off your order with the code MOVE at hyperice.com.
She punches the air and she crosses that blue finish line. The world champion of 12 months ago, who finished second here last time around, has won it.
The athletes' village is not a place for fighting. I've never heard that ever in Olympic and Paralympic history.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast, covering the games all the time rather than once every 4 years. I'm John.
And I'm Michael, and coming up in this episode, we are on the cusp of another Olympic year. We've missed it. We'll look back on 2023 and look ahead to 2024 and much, much more.
We're joined by two of the no-doubt stars of the British swimming team ahead of their first ever joint Olympic and Paralympic trials.
And talking of swimming, what an end to the year in a record-breaking European Short Course Championships in Romania. We'll have a deep dive into that one to come.
And stay in touch with us and see what we're all about anytime. Anything But Footy on social media. We're even on TikTok these days. Or you can check out our website, anythingbutfooty.com. Now, a decision has finally been made. A Friday afternoon, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, an email drops in from the International Olympic Committee, basically confirming what we thought would happen, but we probably didn't think it would happen pre-Christmas, but it has. Neutral athletes from Russia and Belarus will be allowed to compete at Paris 2024. Now, that is subject to strict eligibility conditions, says the International Olympic Committee. No Russian flags, no anthems, no team events for the neutral athletes, just individual sports. Now, the IOC says it'll also seek an independent evaluation of the eligibility of each qualified neutral athlete. So they'll actually go through maybe some of their past social media, what they've been doing, that kind of thing, to decide whether they are really neutral or whether they have supported the war in some way. It also states so far only 8 Russians and 3 Belarus athletes have qualified. In comparison to date, more than 60 Ukrainian athletes have. So, Michael, the decision finally been made.
Yeah, 2 things I'm mindful, really. One, we go back to that conversation we had with Dame Catherine Granger, chair of UK Sport and, British Olympic hero, of course. And the fact that she said as an athlete, and let's put the athletes first here, she just wanted to know. So she just wanted to know as soon as possible, because an elite athlete wants all of their controllables, if you like, heading into their major event, their Olympic year. They just want to know. So they know they've got that decision, the athletes. What I would also say is it's a decision that's pleased no one on either side, to be honest. I mean, Ukraine's foreign minister, in response to this, said the IOC has essentially given Russia the green light to weaponize the Olympics. Meanwhile, the Russian sports minister also not happy, calling the move discriminatory. So we have 60 Ukrainian athletes who have qualified for next year's Olympics. I think we've got about 4,600 athletes in total worldwide who have so far qualified. So we know from a Team GB point of view, we have sailors, We have canoeists, slalom canoeists, and we have some triathletes. But around about 4,600 athletes worldwide have qualified. There'll be about 11,000 in Paris. And as you said, there are 8 Russians, 3 Belarusians. So we've got 11 at the moment who have kind of passed this criteria, if you like, and will be there as neutrals. So we'll have no teams, and we'll have no Russian flags, and we'll have no Russian emblems. And it will be very interesting, I think, to watch those athletes that were born in Russia and Belarus and, see what their behaviour is, see if there is any opportunity for them, or see if they seize any opportunity to try and make a point, if you like, supporting what their home nation is doing at the moment.
We also know there's no athletes, as in athletics. Seb Coe, the president of World Athletics, has said that he will not change their stance because World Athletics voted for this, that they were banned and they will not be competing. So he has already said there will be no neutrals competing in athletics. So the sport federations can still implement this, but this is probably most of the sports will follow what the IOC say.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think most sports will follow what the IOC are saying. I think Lord Coe and World Athletics have made their point very clear on this, and they will stick to it. I'm frankly surprised that the IOC have made the decision this early. I think it's good, though, for the athletes, not just the athletes affected in terms of Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, but athletes across the world. I think the fact that we know that Team GB are so deep into their planning at the moment for these games, and they will be able to continue that planning. Mark England and his team, the chef de mission, knowing now that there will be athletes who were born in Russia or born in Belarus competing there as neutrals, and that will obviously come into their planning. And it doesn't come as a surprise, because I think after the initial invasion of Ukraine, where Russian and Belarus athletes, of course, were completely expelled from all sport, we have seen the gradual reintroduction. We have seen it working. You were at Wimbledon, and I think you probably saw it there and changed your tune. That's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
And so, I think it was really the roadmap that we were on. As I said, that the surprise to me is that the IOC haven't left it later. What happens, if there is, a major atrocity between now and the games? Will this decision be changed? Could it still perhaps be overturned?
We will see. So good luck to the neutrals. At least, as Michael said, there is now some clarity, whether you like it or not, but athletes will be able to consider what they do. And as we said so many times on this podcast, and as Michael alluded to, they're generally working in tennis. So it's a very individual sport, tennis. So I think it can work at the Olympics, but we have to as well play our part as media and not call them Russian and Belarusians as well. That will be something that I will be trying to tell my other media colleagues as we cover the Paris 2024 games. We also know, Michael, that one team who won't be in Paris is Team GB in women's football. Despite that 6-0 thrashing of Scotland, England were denied top spot in the new Nations League that was the qualification for the Olympics by a 95th minute winner from the Netherlands in their game. So they topped the group, and it means England missed out on still having the chance to qualify for Paris. So the European champions, the World Cup finalists, will be one of the most high-profile sporting stars not in Paris next summer. Now, I wrote a blog about this last week when we saw what was happening. I think it was last Monday night when the match happened, and we thought we'd just about made it when they scored a 6th goal, and then Netherlands scored, and it was really, really disappointing. And we know that Team GB are gutted by this as well, because they really wanted to take this team, because we don't take a men's football team, but from a women's football point of view, Michael, this is the second most important competition in their calendar. And as I mentioned, the European champions and the World Cup finalists not there.
Yeah, it's hugely disappointing. I think everyone was pretty emotional, shall we say that, after the actual result and that realisation that Team GB wouldn't have a football team. And there's been lots of discussion and lots of conversations around what's gone wrong, why Team GB haven't qualified a team this time. I would certainly point people in the direction of your blog that was written in the immediate aftermath for that. I think the first thing I would say is the trajectory of women's football in this country from an England, Scotland, Team GB point of view has been pretty supersonic. as we know. I mean, when you consider we go back to 2012, when there was a women's team, obviously, and a men's team at the London Olympics, what has happened with our national game and our national team since then has been fantastic. You know, the European championship victory was wonderful. It was amazing. I think it kind of drew a line under a lot of what had been happening in the world with the pandemic and COVID. It seemed just like a collective opportunity just to embrace something and enjoy that and everything that came with it. Disappointment, you have to say, against Spain. I don't think England turned up in the World Cup final. I don't think they played as well as they could. Yep. But they had this immediate opportunity to bounce back and qualify for the Olympic Games. But was that immediate opportunity perhaps part of the undoing? Because you had a squad, a team who'd been the nominated team to try and qualify for the Olympic Games that had to try and lift themselves and go again straight away. And, you know, I think some of the points you raise in the blog's very interesting. Why are we trying to... Why are we comparing men and women's football all the time? We don't compare men and women's athletics all the time. We've spoken about that before. Yep. 2, why is the women's game trying to do exactly the same as what the men's game has done? I think we've got an opportunity. As we record, we've just seen a 60,000 crowd watching Women's Super League football, a domestic fixture this week. Brilliant atmosphere. And I just think that we have an opportunity, not just in this country, but globally, to look at what we want to do with the game of women's football. And it's a different game to men's football, and that's not to its detriment. It's still hugely exciting. It's still got some fantastic athletes. It's still got some terrific performances. But what do we want to do? How do we make it work? How do we set the calendar up? What do we do in this country to ensure that the Women's Super League thrives? And then importantly, how do we give the national team the best opportunity of competing on those world stages? The European Championships, the World Cup, and as you say there, the Olympic Games, the biggest sporting stage of all, and for women's football, probably the second biggest trophy that these players want to win.
Yeah, and the fact that you say the calendar it seems to be mirroring the men's game. Now, the Olympics for the men is still an important competition. You ask Neymar, you ask Messi, you ask Mbappe, they all want to win it. But it's an under-23 men's competition. But it's a full women's Olympic event. So it does make it the second most important competition. So then it shouldn't just follow straight after the World Cup, should it? It should be staggered, because you want the best in the world to be competing, as I said in the blog, at the world's greatest show. So, look, I am absolutely gutted they're not there, mainly because I've got women's quarter-final tickets.
I knew that was coming.
Women's quarter-final tickets in the Parc de France in Paris, and I was hoping that we will be lucky and see Team GB there. We're not going to see them at all, unfortunately.
Let's move on to swimming and the final major meet of the year. It was a wonderful week for British swimming in Romania at the European Short Course Championship. British swimming took a 35-strong team. Remember, a record-breaking performance for British swimming in Tokyo at the Olympic Games, and they've gone on, and this was just an amazing meet for the British swimmers. Let me just run it through for you, night by night. So, first night, women's 400 metres individual medley. Abby Wood with the gold, Freya Colbert with the silver, a stunning breaststroke leg from Abby Wood, and a flying freestyle leg. So a gold and a silver on night number one. Also on night number one, bronze in the 4x50 metre freestyle for women. So Anna Hopkin, Freya Anderson, Meddy Harrison, Lucy Hope, and a gold for the men's 4x50 metre freestyle squad. That was Ben Proud, Matt Richards, Alexander Cahoon, and Lewis Barris, and Duncan Scott as well for swimming in one of the heats. So that was night number one. Night two, a bronze from Jacob Peters in the men's 100 metres butterfly. A real sort of landmark moment for Jacob there, his first ever individual international medal. A silver for the men's 4x50 metre medley relay team. So Jacob Peters' second medal of the night. Matt Richards back on the podium as well. Jono Adams, Ed Mildred, Alexander Cahoon, Archie Goodburn, Oliver Morgan, some of those obviously swimming in the heats. On night number three, a gold and a silver in the women's 200 metre backstroke. Meddy Harris with the gold, Katie Shanahan with the silver. Gold for the wonderful and the brilliant and the much underestimated Ben Proud. I say underestimated, I think nationally. I think if Ben Proud had made his achievements in athletics, for example. I think you could just give all the sporting awards to him over the last couple of years. But a gold in the 50-metre freestyle, new European record time as well. Fantastic for Ben Proud. Bronze in the 4x50-metre medley relay. Kathleen Dawson, Imogen Clark, Cam McInnes, Anna Hopkin. There were also other swimmers there who pick up medals for swimming in the heats. Cara Hanlon, Laura Stevens and Freya Anderson. Are you keeping up here?
Yeah.
I think you should probably sort of buckle up and open the Christmas chocolates now, because we're only on night number 4. A gold from Duncan Scott, British record in the men's 200 metres individual medley. Silver and a bronze in the women's 100 metres freestyle, Anna Hopkin and Freya Anderson. Then we move on to night number 5. Matt Richards with a gold, James Guy with a silver. We're going to hear it from James Guy very shortly. 200 metre freestyle double then. The 200 metres meant a freestyle double there for Matt Richards. And the first podium in the 200 free for James Guy since 2016. Meddy Harris with a silver in the 100 metres backstroke, so that added to her 200 metre title. A gold for Abby Wood in the 200 metres individual medley. That meant a 200 metre and a 400 metre double for her. And a gold as well in the mixed 4x50 metre freestyle for Ben Proud, Lewis Barris, Anna Hopkin and Freya Anderson. You're hearing some of these names coming around again and again. Alexander Cahoon and Lucy Hope also getting medals for swimming in the heats. And on the final night, well, wait for this. Freya Anderson, women's 200 metre freestyle gold. Freya Colbert winning the bronze. There was a silver for Luke Greenbank in the 200 metre backstroke. Lost out on the touch by 0.1 second. There was a silver for Duncan Scott in the 400 metres individual medley. And a bronze for Imogen Clark in the 50 metre breaststroke. I think I've got them all. 23 medals, 9 gold, 8 silver, 6 bronze. Top of the table. And they actually award a trophy, which James Guy got to do. He did the honours for British swimming, and British swimming lifting that trophy, top of the medal table, the best nation at the European Short Course Swimming Championships.
Absolutely incredible week, as Michael said, and it's right that we go through it in that detail, because these are names that you need to know before Paris 2024. We don't know the team yet for Team GB, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but we do know these swimmers are going to be superstars. They broke records in Tokyo. They could well do the same in Paris. Yes, it's the European Championships. Yes, it's the short course, which means it's a 25-metre pool rather than a 50-metre pool, just in case anybody didn't really understand that. It's not an Olympic-sized pool, so you have more turns in that. And, of course, you've got the Americans and the Australians to come in when it is the Olympics. But it is exciting times for British swimming, and it is exciting because if you stay with us, we're going to give you more details of what is going to happen next year at the London Aquatic Centre. This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast. And stay with us. We'll have our news from the games and a winter special as well to come.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast. We've been reflecting there on a wonderful week for British swimming at the European Short Course Championships, and British swimming have also announced details for next year's British Championships at the London Aquatic Centre. And for the first time ever, John, fully integrated, featuring both Olympic and Paralympic disciplines.
Yeah, it will act as trials for the Games in Paris, so the Olympic and Paralympic trials. And Michael has been speaking to Alice Tai, who won 7 world titles at that pool in 2019.
First and foremost, we're on the cusp of another Paralympic year. How much does it burn inside you that you want to be back on that stage in 2024?
I actually can't explain how motivated I feel this season. I missed out on Tokyo because I had to have surgery on my arms, and that was devastating. So it would, I've been in the sport for so long, but it'll only be my second Paralympics. I say only, that's still a huge feat in itself. But yeah, I'm super excited, and I can't believe how quickly it snuck up.
Because the TV sofa was good in 2021, watching all the performances from Tokyo, but to be there, that is what you're in the sport for. How hard was it to miss out?
It was, it's always going to be absolutely gutting. I had trained so much and put so much time into getting to Tokyo and competing there. So to have that taken away from me was just, it was a really difficult thing to process. But at the same time, I had a really great time with Channel 4 on the sofa, like trying my hand at some punditry. So I think, in hindsight, I actually wouldn't change it. I kind of learnt a whole new appreciation for para swimming and para sport in general. So as much as it was really upsetting, I also think, I made the best of a bad situation, and I genuinely wouldn't change it. It's really, I'm not sure I'd have kept going after Tokyo if I didn't do Tokyo, but I'm glad I'm still here. So it kind of rejuvenated my approach to the sport, I guess.
So how important then is coming back to the London Aquatic Centre on that road to the next Paralympic Games in Paris for you?
I mean, first off, I live kind of in London. I'm moving further out every year because it's getting a bit busy, and I'm not so much of a city person. But it's nice to be able to, I'll be able to come home and have a home cooked dinner every night. So I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I have some great memories at the Aquatic Centre. Obviously, the 7 golds in 2019 at World Champs was pretty big success, if I say so myself. But also I've been to a couple of local competitions there with my clubs, just one club, just Ealing Swimming Club, just there for counties and stuff. And it's, I don't know, the pool, as well as holding the 2012 games, it's just become quite a huge part of me and my swimming. So being able to return, it's always nice, as well as it being kind of on the doorstep. It's nice to go back to such an amazing pool with such great history.
What goes through your mind then when you go through the front door? What's the main memory? Is it a memory from watching in 2012? If I had 7 world titles in one venue, I mean, that might be the first and foremost thing that would go through my mind when I walk into reception.
I think it's a really interesting one for me because it really does represent my career from the grassroots up until the pinnacle, I guess. I was there watching Ellie Simmonds swim her final in the 400 free in London 2012, and I was in the crowd just cheering her on, so excited just to be watching a Paralympic Games. And then to go back and have kind of the best moment in my career on paper, be at the same pool, is really crazy. So whenever I walk through the doors, it's kind of, it all hits me. It's like the nostalgia of being like, how old was I? 13 years old, watching the Paralympics for the first time and being so motivated, being like, I want to be in that pool. I want to be part of this team, to then actually being part of the team and winning gold medals at World Champs in that pool. So there's a lot that goes through my mind.
And just finally then from me, how important, how much credit should go to British swimming to be hosting this integrated event, the British Championships? Surely that is the way forward and the way it should be.
Yeah, I mean, the more integration, the better. It's definitely come on leaps and bounds. And I think the most important thing is it raises awareness in parasport. The coach I'm with now, he's really learned so much about para swimming, and then he's been able to pass that knowledge on to other coaches when they've had a para swimmer for the first time. So I think most importantly, it's opening those doors for coaches and for clubs to see firsthand, and there won't be there'll be less confusion when a club receives a new para athlete on how they should train, which is pretty much similar to able-bodied athletes, and the pathways they can take and just everything to do with the sport. Swimming is swimming, but it is slightly different in terms of the processes to get from grassroots to elite. So I think that's amazing. And hopefully we can raise more awareness. Every year, more para swimmers turn up on poolside. So hopefully that'll just keep growing and growing.
So an interesting conversation there with Alice Tighe ahead of the British Championships, the Olympic and the Paralympic trials at the London Aquatic Centre. I had another chat actually with Alice, other than what you heard there, and we talked about the integration of this event, and obviously she was saying what a fantastic idea it is and how domestically she feels that it will really raise the profile of, and she was hinting at it there obviously in that last answer that she gave, really raise the profile of para sport and the pathways that are available for para swimmers through to things like the Paralympic Games. But she was also very forthright as we were sort of just having a chat and talking about general things, saying that she feels very strongly that the Olympics and the Paralympics should stay very much separate events. She was disappointed with the potential future of the Commonwealth Games, because I think she feels that the integration works there at the Commonwealth Games, but as we know, it's not perfect because the host nation tends to include para events where they know they're going to win medals. So there's always a little bit of a swerve, if you like, there, a little bit of front loading of the medal table. But I think Alice takes the position that, the movement towards integration, some is better than none at the Commonwealth Games. But she was very, very clear to me that she wouldn't want anything changing in terms of the calendar and the way the Olympics and the Paralympics work. Now, also, when I was speaking to Alice, someone else popped up on the Zoom call, and I couldn't resist having a chat with him. I have to say this was recorded before those European Short Course Championships, so I didn't get the opportunity to congratulate James Guy on his medals, but we did talk about the fact that next year's British Championships at the London Aquatic Centre will be that fully integrated Olympic and Paralympic event.
Lovely to see you again. When we talk about the trials at the London Aquatic Centre, we have to then think back at the story of British swimming in the last 10 years, because you go back to the Olympics in 2012 and swimming was the poor relation, wasn't it? And then you fast forward a decade and a bit, and what you guys did in Tokyo, it's been quite the journey, quite the story.
Yeah, it's definitely come on leaps and bounds, I think, since London. Obviously, Becky and Michael were our only two medalists in London, how long ago was it? 12 years ago, 11 years ago. And now it's kind of like we're one of the powerhouses of swimming, which is great how it's come on. Like you said, we were the number one sport in Tokyo 3 years ago. It's kind of weird how it's all changed, and, we're in a great place at the minute. But I think, what we have right now in British swimming is very, very special. And I think, at some point, again, we'll go through that recycle again of, people retiring, new guys coming through, and that's just kind of where it happens. And I'm sure, at some point we might struggle again a little bit, but that's just part of, I don't know when it might be, but it might be probably 10 years down the line of, people haven't kind of quite broken through yet. Where I think right now, probably for the next 10 years, we're kind of sorted very, very well. Obviously Matt Richards is a great athlete, but yeah, going back to your question, back to London again for the trials. Obviously we had the trials there in 2021, but this time there'll be a crowd there, which is great. It's the pinnacle for me, is the best pool we have in Great Britain, and I think we should use it a lot more. But yeah, I think one thing we don't do in British swimming, we don't glorify, the British Championships to be this mega major thing where the USA, it's like the pinnacle of the events. There's lights, there's fire around it, where it's kind of, you go there, you get the job done, and you kind of go back to training. I think that aspect of it and mentality of it is very, very good. But yeah, it's going to be exciting to do it in 4 months' time there, and hopefully we'll swim faster.
When you say we don't use the London Aquatic Centre enough, what should we be doing there?
It's obviously very expensive to run compared to other places. That's just the nature of where it is. But obviously more competitions there, which is obviously it's kind of progressing that way with the AP meet that was there in May. It's the first, I think, open international meet that they've had in a long time that people can enter in. I just think it just makes, obviously it's the bottom end of the country, so it's a bit of a trek away for people. But just competing there more, why don't we use it? It's an amazing facility. It's got 2 Olympic-sized pools in there, so much space. There's so many hotels around that area. It'd be a great meet to compete there, or great pool to compete there. Across the board of the year. So, and just unfortunately we don't use it enough, really.
And as a double Olympic champion, I guess your message to everybody, despite the challenges that there are in the world about keeping swimming pools open and heated and everything else, is what a great activity to go out and do, both physically and mentally as well, James.
Yeah, I think for me, swimming is probably the best physical exercise you can do as a full body exercise. It is tiring for me. Like if I'm not really happy with what I'm doing mentally, I know that if I'm going to the pool and swimming, my mind switches off and focuses on the pool, and it's a great place to have peace at. And that's one thing I don't think, even like going in a lake or in a wetsuit or going and swimming in the sea or a canal, whatever it may be, it's so peaceful. You can do it on your own terms as well. It isn't like, you have to hurt yourself, and where like I find running on a road really, really hard on a treadmill. Where swimming in the pool, you're constantly thinking, your mind's still going, and you're not in the same spot. You're in different places all the time, and you can go for a swim anywhere, which is kind of the nice thing about it as well. So yeah, it's definitely for me, it's a good mental breaker.
And when you talk about the mental approach to sport, I think when I spoke to a lot of you guys after your program in Tokyo, you all just looked as though you'd had enough, to be honest. I mean, when I spoke to some of you in the immediate aftermath of winning your medals, you just all looked like you so wanted and needed that break. It was a real tough, extended build up to those games, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really weird because obviously we had the extended year because of COVID. So it was effectively a 5-year cycle into the Olympic Games, which was a bit of, it always makes it a little bit harder mentally because you've got to pull on that year of Olympic shift mentality, which is always a bit harder. And obviously the games happened. We won the medals we wanted to win. But I said this a few days ago, what we do isn't normal. Getting up at silly hours, training 4 or 5 hours a day in the pool, hurting yourself, putting yourself through pain. And you've done it for the last 12, 13 years, if not longer, to win a piece of metal around your neck. And then obviously once it's done, it's like, wow, thank God that's done. It's not a normal thing we do. And, we put ourselves through hell to get where we want to go and what we want to achieve. And that's our drive maker, our goal. So when you achieve it, it's so nice to have that kind of sigh of relief that the hard work does pay off. So, I mean, you compare us to a 9-to-5 normal day job, it's a lot different. Which I think kind of going from pool life to work life will be a lot easier.
And when you put those two pieces of gold metal around your neck, did you at any point think, I've done it, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve, I can pack in now? At what point did you think, I want to do this all over again?
I think straight after the games, it was like, obviously, winning the 2 gold medals. Obviously, the individual one that I wasn't allowed to swim in, it kind of really haunted me for a little while. Kind of put that to bed, which was quite nice. But, that obviously swimming really well in Tokyo made me think, can I do more? Can I do more? Can I swim faster? Have I given everything? Am I getting the best out of myself? And for me, it's leaving no stone unturned. And that's why, obviously, I moved down to Millfield this year. But yeah, I think that kind of hit you get of being on the podium, winning, being crowned Olympic champions with your mates on the podium, with one of my best mates, Mr. PT. It's a feeling you can't buy and you can't experience unless you actually go and do it. Doesn't matter how much money you've got, you will not experience that unless you put the hard work in and you think, can you do it again? Can you have that feeling again? I think that's why everyone, wants to keep going because, it's addictive of that winning feeling of, being crowned the best in the world. It's definitely probably a feeling you can't really describe.
Final question then from me, and I know you've spoken about it a bit earlier on today, but how is Adam and how important is Adam PT to British Swimming and Team GB?
Mr. Petey's great. I said before, called him for a little bit, talking about life and our plans for New Year's Eve. Mentally, he's in a great spot at the minute. He seems really happy with what he's doing. He's training really, really well. I think his confidence is coming back. We saw that out of the World Cups. He was getting sharper and sharper through the rounds. And I said to him, at the end of the day, you're not, he's the one hunting, not being hunted. He's had so long out of the water, but I'd rather be in the position you're in than being the one at the top trying to get hunted down. So, he's in a great place. He's happy. He's training really, really well. He's doing things he hasn't done before in the pool, which is great. Obviously, he's swimming fast. But yeah, I think he's in a great mindset, and I'll see him in 2 weeks' time for my engagement party, which will be lovely. And we'll catch up then.
And what are we doing for New Year then? You and Adam?
I'm not sure, actually. I think might be going down
Top
to Cornwall
secret
together. Top secret. Maybe go down to Cornwall. I don't know. Spend a few years, but I've got his Swim with the Stars thing on the 30th, and then we'll try and meet up together with the girlfriends and the fiance and do something together for New Year's Eve.
Well, happy Christmas and happy New Year, and thanks for your time, James.
Thanks, mate. You too.
So James Guy talking to Michael and calling for more events at the London Aquatic Centre. And we spend a lot of time there, Michael, don't we, as part of the podcast we make for Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. That park is changed in the last 6 months since I've been going. And I've been going there for 10 years and obviously during games time as well in 2012. But now there are students on there because these universities have opened, the UAL, the Arts of London, London College of Fashion, and the UCL as well. And there was such a buzz just walking around that park, even in the middle of November and December. So I think if we can have more of these sporting events taking place in such an iconic venue that the London Aquatic Centre is, and these sports that were there in 2012 can come back and also have a future in this park, then it does feel like that is an incredible legacy that not many people talk about in comparison to the likes of Barcelona and Beijing and other Olympic Games that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, do you know what I absolutely love? I mean, as you say, we do go back there and spend quite a bit of time there, but you go to the velodrome, and you'll see the velodrome obviously being used for elite competition, and the cyclists would probably agree with what James Guy is saying, so we don't use it enough.
Yeah.
But there are other velodrome options in Manchester, having been refurbished, in Newport, of course, as well, the Chris Hoy velodrome in Glasgow that was used for the Commonwealth Games in 2014. But also you'll see, just the amateur enthusiasts using that velodrome. And that's exactly the same at the London Aquatic Centre. I know that we were there for a day, probably pre-pandemic now, actually, probably going back 3 or 4 years. But, in the morning you see Tom Daley and you see, the likes of the British diving team there doing their training. And then in the afternoon, there's a giant inflatable in the pool. And, it's a massive community facility and anyone can pay their couple of quid on the door and go in. I just think that's amazing that, you and I and your son and my daughters, if we so desired on a half-term week, could go and take them to mess about on a giant inflatable in the middle of the Olympic pool. Other interesting points there that James Guy makes, obviously very excited about what Great Britain can do in Paris. And as I said, was a conversation when he jumped on that Zoom call with Alice that we had just before the short course championship, so he'd probably be even more excited about that. Interesting to talk, and it's another one of those conversations that we're having around mental health and well-being and how unnatural a life it is being an elite athlete and what those guys do day in, day out. But I think it was lovely there just to hear at the end of it that Adam Peaty, or Mr. Peaty, as James Guy insists on calling him. That's the respect. Mr. Peaty, he's on his way back in a good place mentally and physically at the moment, and James Guy and Adam Peaty are planning on spending New Year together. Although I did ask, as you heard there, where and what we were doing, but I was told it was top secret.
I'm sure it is, and it's also reminded me when we go and do interviews with these athletes, and we do quite a lot of them, as you well know, over the past few years, and we will no doubt be speaking to Tom Daley at some point in the future. He's been back in the British diving team, back in their funding for the Olympics after taking a couple of years out. We have to ask him if he's done the inflatables in the London Aquatic Centre. We have to ask him if he's had that. Incredible. We need to crack on because we've got plenty more to come on this episode of Anything But Footy. We'll be having a Winter Games special with Michael in a moment, but we can't end the year's podcasts without talking about 2023, what's happened, and looking ahead to 2024. It is Olympic year, as Michael said right at the start, and frankly, we have not got a clue who's going to win these gold medals. We'll have a few guesses, of course, but you never know from other nations who's going to burst onto the scene. But we thought we'd run through a few headlines of people that we are glad are coming back, but also some new names that maybe it's worth keeping an eye out for in Paris. And we need to talk Sports Personality of the Year for 23 as well. So, firstly, Laura Kenny is back. Since we last recorded a podcast, Michael, she confirmed to Team GB that she's definitely going for Paris after having, of course, her second child, which is fantastic news. But remember, 2023 was the year of the World Cycling Championships in Glasgow, and we saw some amazing stars up there like Emma Finnecane as well, who really burst onto the scene on the track.
And we mentioned, obviously, Tom Daley coming back. We've talked a lot about, obviously, the fantastic performances as far as British swimming are concerned as well. And gymnastics, again, we've got a full qualification spot there for GB as well. And gymnastics was a sport in Tokyo and in Rio, of course, that, has always been good for a few medals as far as Team GB are concerned. So we'll be hoping for the same. Max Whitlock, of course, will be hoping to go again. Maybe looking for a third consecutive gold, maybe, for Max Whitlock. We've also got the likes of Jake Jarman and Joe Fraser and others as well. I do think, obviously, I should just say for the women's gymnastics team, obviously they would have hoped to have got a medal in the team event, but a couple of injuries there might hinder that plan for that medal.
Jessica Gadarova, all the best. She's just had surgery, I think, in the last couple of weeks, hasn't she? So we wish her well on her return. I think she had an ACL, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's some pretty gory pictures on Instagram. She put a warning.
She did. You mentioned a full quota spot for the gymnastics. Same with British Equestrian. They have got all their spots secured already for Paris, as have in the Paralympics, wheelchair basketball, rugby, and equestrian, which is great news. We know, I think you mentioned earlier, Michael, the canoeing team. We've got Joe Clark, Marilee Franklin, both Olympic medalists in games gone by, who are coming back for more. In sailing, John Gibson and Anna Burnett. In the NACRA, Emma Wilson as well. And of course, the outstanding Beth Potter and Alex Yee in the triathlon as well.
Yeah, and the rugby sevens, we know that there'll be a Team GB women's team. In the rugby sevens, the men still have to qualify, but courtesy of that performance at the European Games. So I think we're beginning to see the makeup, aren't we, of Team GB for 2024. Having said all that, I don't think it's been a vintage year for British sport.
Okay. In terms of looking back and seeing who's been successful and who's going to win the Sports Personality of the Year.
When you talk about Sports Personality of the Year, I mean, when you go back, and I know it's slightly different, if you like, in Olympic years, because you will always have a big cohort of Olympic gold medalists. But I actually think, this year we've seen some terrific performances from British rowing, which we've deliberately left to quite late on in the podcast to mention, for reasons that if you're a regular listener, you'll know. We've seen terrific performances from British swimming and British cycling. But I think if you were to be pushed to try and name the 6 on the shortlist, if you like, for Sports Personality of the Year, I think you're gonna struggle a bit. I mean, the obvious 2 for me are both from the World Athletics Championships, which is Josh Kerr and Katarina Johnson-Thompson. Personally, I can't see why anyone else is in the running for this other than Katarina Johnson-Thompson, back on top of the world after horrendous injuries in her event in heptathlon. And winning that World Championship. Now, I know Nafi Thiam of Belgium wasn't there and may well be there for the Olympic Games, but I'm a member of the Sports Journalists Association, and we've just had our recent awards, and it was Mary Earps that was voted the Women's Sports Personality of the Year, and it was Stuart Broad who won the Men's Sports Personality of the Year. And what I would say is Mary Earps was runner-up in the World Cup, and Stuart Broad was in a drawn Ashes series. I'm not a huge cricket fan, but I think that meant that Australia got to keep the urn. So
they did.
Why are we not talking about the fact that Josh Kerr is the best 1500 metre runner in the world, and Katarina Johnson-Thompson is the best female all-round athlete on the planet at the minute?
Yeah, because we did a special podcast, didn't we, after those World Athletics Championships, because they were so successful for British athletics. All the problems that British athletics has had and still has at the moment, actually, on the track, is really performing. And Josh Kerr, a year after Jake Whiteman won the 1500 metre men's title, they retained it for Britain, and they beat, of course, the great Norwegian Inga Britson as well for a second year running. It is an incredible story. And Josh Kerr, who I think you spoke to after the World Athletics. It's a great podcast. It's well worth going back and listening to that episode. He's fought his way through the American system, grew up in Scotland, came through the American system, and is now really focused on going back to the Olympics and doing what he couldn't do in Tokyo and get that medal for Paris next year. But yeah, I agree with you, Michael. KJT, Josh Kerr should be the top 2, in my opinion, for this year's Sports Personality of the Year. If we were back in the day and it was Sally Gunnell and Linford Christie had done those World Championships, they would be winning Sports Personality of the Year. But I think it will be Mary Earps, as you say, for the success of the Lionesses. But I have an issue with the fact that, as you say, yes, she saved a penalty in the World Cup final, but I didn't think we played very well in that all the way through the tournament. But she was the standout player. But then that doesn't necessarily mean that you should win the Sports Personality of the Year, in my opinion. No, and
I would go back to the fact that Josh Kerr and Katarina Johnson-Thompson are winners. They are world champions, the best at what they do. England fell short at the World Cup. England's cricketers fell slightly short in the Ashes test. I mean, Josh Kerr, you mentioned obviously, he's in this race now, this domestic race,
Yes.
if you like, with Jake Whiteman. Josh Kerr won that bronze, remember, in the 1500 metres.
That's right,
in Tokyo. And then Jake Whiteman came back, didn't he, in Oregon and took the world title. And now Josh has got the world title. In the 1980s and early 1990s, you know, this kind of stuff would have been on primetime TV and, you know, would have been the headline package on Sports Personality of the Year when it was the likes of Coe, Cram and Ovett. But at the minute, Josh Kerr, Jake Whiteman hasn't quite caught the imagination in the same way. And maybe that's where the state of athletics, you know, globally or in this country at the moment. And, you know, there's work to be done there. And we know that there's work taking place. And we know that there's good people at World Athletics doing that work. And Lord Coe, obviously, you know, a terrific sports administrator now, you know, has that job. And I think once we get round to Tokyo and athletics will take centre stage, certainly from a GB point of view in that second week. You know, hopefully Jake Whiteman and Josh Kerr will put themselves on that platform. I think Katarina Johnson-Thompson is one of the names that has probably broken through. The casual sports fan will know who she is. And for me, number one for me, she would be my Sports Personality of the Year.
Well, let us know what you think. We'll keep banging the drum for British athletics and all the rest of our Olympic and Paralympic athletes, of course. But let us know who your star of 2023 is, your hope for 24 as well. And don't forget, you can check out our new sporting calendar for next year, plus all our latest blogs on the website, anythingbutfooty.com.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
As ever, you can always get in touch with us, as John was saying there. Find us on socials, find us online. I just want to finish with wrapping up a few headlines from the world of winter sports as we approach Christmas, of course. The snow and the ice season is very much back on the agenda. It's always, I think, very difficult for some of our winter sports stars to make any kind of impact when there's not the Winter Olympics to aim for, which we haven't got, obviously, in 2024. We have to wait for that one in 2026. But let's take nothing away from the likes of Mia Brooks with a lifetime best, winning the silver medal in the Big Air World Cup in Edmonton. Also Matt Weston and Marcus Wyatt, silver and bronze in the skeleton at the most recent World Cup in La Plana. Tabby Sturker won the gold, by the way, in just her second World Cup race in the skeleton there. There was also golds for Hugh Nightingale and Charlotte Banks in the first snowboard cross team event of the season. A silver for Kirsty Muir in the Beijing Big Air World Cup. Good to see that Beijing venue continuing to be used, of course, after the 2022 Winter Games. In curling, European champions for the fourth time on home ice for Team Muir. 2018, 2021, 2022 and 2023. Lewis Gibson and Lola Fear as well. Huge breakthrough for that pair with a first ever Grand Prix win and a new PB talking figure skating. We do have a Winter Youth Games coming up at the start of 2024, taking place in South Korea, and Eve Muirhead will be leading the team. Gold medal winning curler, of course, and we'll be speaking to her on a future edition of Great British Bosses. But we also have a Christmas special coming up, and I mention this because it's very winter sport themed. Not only are we talking warm mittens.
My hands get really cold. I mean, makes me sound really simplistic, doesn't it? But I get really cold hands standing there for telly. I got the heated socks last Christmas, so I'm hoping for the hand warmers this Christmas.
But we are talking to Shemi Alcott in her role as an ambassador for protecting our winter for future generations. Shemi will be our guest on our Christmas special for Great British Bosses this year.
We can't wait for that. It will be out next week, just before the festivities get underway. But it's been quite a year for British sport in the 2023. Michael said it hasn't been a vintage year. 46 world champions, 57 Paralympic world champions. When we went to visit UK Sport a few months ago, there have been no doubt many more. But of course, it's all eyes on Paris, and we are heading into that Olympic and Paralympic year in 2024. Stay with us on Anything But Footy. We'll keep you bang up to date.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.